back to the Bolt Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, your guide on this exciting journey of personal growth and leadership, where my guests and I will share personal stories from our transformational journeys of how small changes can lead to massive results. You'll discover tips on overcoming obstacles, setting and achieving goals, building lasting habits, living a happy, healthy, and positive life, and so much more. If you're ready to cultivate a growth mindset and become the best version of yourself, then let's ignite your growth today. Joining us today is Travis Bornstein, a dedicated leader and advocate with over 28 years of experience as president of Teamsters Local number 24 in Akron, Ohio. Known for his integrity and fairness, Travis is also a John Maxwell certified speaker, teacher, and coach specializing in leadership development. As the founder of his nonprofit, HopeUnited, inspired by the loss of his son Tyler, Travis has become a powerful voice in the fight against the opioid epidemic. His advocacy has been pivotal, influencing policy changes like Ohio's first Good Samaritan 911 law and holding Big Pharma accountable. His work has been featured in Forbes and Bloomberg, and he's addressed members of Congress on addiction reform. Travis is a proud U.S. Marine Corps veteran and family man, married over 25 years with 2 daughters. Listeners, get ready for an inspiring conversation filled with resilience, leadership, and hope. Travis, welcome to the Bolt Podcast, my friend.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it very much. It's an honor to be here, and you're doing great things, man.
Thank you.
It's awesome. I've been watching some of the things you have going on, and you're doing good, bud.
Thank you.
Proud of you, man.
I mean, it's all about these stories of resilience, personal growth, and leadership. So, when LinkedIn, I saw that you liked a few posts, and I reached back. I'm like, Travis, I know that guy. And so just to share the story, how you and I met, I think it was probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
My company, Evolve Marketing, we were doing a redesign of a website for the Opiate Task Force for Summit County. And so we were collaborating with the ADM board. And I believe they brought you in to share your story. You were kind of the man known to speak to us about opioids and the epidemic. And man, it's so funny because I remember you walking in that door. I'm like, who's this guy? You have this commanding presence. You and I talked about it a little bit, and not in a bad way. It's just, you're a big guy. Yeah. You're bulky, and, it's like.
So, I'm an intense dude naturally, and, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. You know what I mean?
Hey, you know what? I mean, it's, for that conversation, I think it's good. Yeah. And so all that to say, man, you left a huge impression on me. And I think I shared this at breakfast when we had breakfast. I mean, I went home, I learned so much about the epidemic. I went home, emptied out our medicine cabinet, which had tons of opiates. I've had 10 kidney stones over the past 10 years, every year, and that's what they give me. Yep. I don't know if you've had one, if you've heard about it, but
painful.
There's only one. There's nothing you could do.
It's
how can you deal with the pain?
Yeah.
And from that day, I've never taken a single opioid.
Awesome.
I have a very addictive personality, so I knew that, and hearing that from you, and I have a 25-year-old son who is an athlete, and that story, and we'll get into it. So you had a huge, just that one conversation, you had a huge impact on me. So when I saw you, I'm like, oh man, I'd love to just reconnect. And so I'm grateful that, we were able to break some bread together and have a conversation and learn more about the journey, 10 years. So a lot has happened, and we're going to talk about that today.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thank you.
I guess, if you want to start off, tell us a little bit about HopeUnited and that journey and how you got started, you and your wife.
So, I think it's important to kind of start, with Tyler, kind of what happened. And, I was, so Shelly and I have been together our whole life. We started dating and I think I was in 8th grade, man.
Oh, high school, or even further.
Yeah, so... And then, like you said, we've been married 35 years, you know what I mean? And Tyler was our first child, our only son. And so just to tell you a little bit about Tyler, he was an honor roll student, all league, all county golfer. He got a golf and academic scholarship at Walsh University. Tyler checked all the check marks that you're looking for kids. And he did a bodybuilding show in 2013. He was runner-up junior Mr. Ohio. So, how does a kid like that get addicted to heroin? You know what I mean? I kind of always say, listen, we played by the rules. my wife and I had good jobs. You know, we're a middle-class family. Our family was in church, right? This ain't supposed to happen to us.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So ultimately, you know, what happened with Tyler is he had broke his right arm 4 times. And he had 2 surgeries on his right elbow. The first surgery was at age 11. Second surgery was at age 18. And ultimately, he became addicted to the opiate prescription pain pills. I didn't even know what an opiate was, right?
Yeah, I don't think any of us
And,
did really.
you know, so the doctor's giving it to you. You're thinking, hey, man, they know what's best. And, you know, to give an opiate to an 11-year-old, you know, now to me sounds crazy. At the time, I didn't know. It wasn't immediate effects, but at 18, a little different time now, right? And so he got addicted to the pain pills, which led to heroin. 4 out of 5 heroin users first began with the use of opiate prescription pain pills.
That's crazy.
Most of the time given to them from a doctor, sports accident, car accident, work-related accident. And it was on, man. And before we really realized how far we were into it, we were deep into it. And so, you know, for the next 6 years of our life, it looked like relapse, recovery. We learned a lot of hard lessons, man. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand addiction as a disease. I was the typical parent that, you know, said, oh, like, what are you doing? We didn't raise you like this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which has nothing to do with nothing. I know that now. I didn't know that then.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I made a lot of mistakes. Now, the mistakes I didn't make is I never stopped loving my son, and I never stopped trying to get him help. You know what I mean? So, you know, to kind of cut through the chase, ultimately what happened is Tyler was in the process of overdosing, and the person he was with, instead of calling 911, dumped him in a field and left him there to die. The next day, the Summit County Sheriff shows up at our house and proceeds to tell my wife and 17-year-old daughter that a resident found a dead body in a vacant lot, and it's our 23-year-old son. So what do, you know, when all your hopes and dreams are left in a field to die? And that's how we got into the space, and that's our journey. And it's still, you know, hard to tell the story, man. It's 10 years, you know.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's still, you know, it's still emotional, still hard. And
that was fentanyl.
Yeah.
Too, right?
So, yeah. So
another epidemic.
Yeah, for sure. And so at the time, again, this is 2014. At the time, he was one of the first young men to die of a fentanyl overdose. Today, 70% of all overdoses are fentanyl related.
70%?
70%.
Oh, my gosh.
You know what I mean? So, you know, through that, ultimately, you know, our family formed a nonprofit in 2016 called HopeUnited. You know, it's basically 3 pillars: education, support, and recovery. You know, we try to get out, we share our story, we speak in schools, we speak with employers, speak at unions, speak at churches, community settings, and just try to share our story and talk about, you know, how did we get to the worst drug epidemic in the history of our country? You know what I mean? Because a lot of people don't understand it, you know what I mean? And so we have a tendency to go, those people. We have a tendency to say, oh, they weren't raised in a good home. We have a tendency to say, well, it's an inner city problem, which all those are false. Mm-hmm. All those are false. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of our educational piece. Our support piece is, you know, obviously we have tons of recovery type meetings. We have family support. We have grief support for families that's lost a loved one or a child due to the disease of addiction. And then our big project's the recovery piece, which is we built the first RCO in Summit County. It's called Tyler's Redemption Place, and it's a 7,500 square foot log cabin right in Springfield Township, man. And it's been awesome, man. It's just been unbelievable.
The space is cool, and I want to come out and see it. And I would recommend anybody, if you just see the one photo and the story. I mean, the story of that building alone, right? That took. Yeah. I mean, it was 7 years before you could even build. Yeah. You know, the funds, COVID, materials, and then you pivoted, going from a commercial building to this crazy, beautiful log cabin. Yeah. Was that Amish built? Yeah. I knew it was inspired.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a crazy journey, you know what I mean? And very difficult. You know, there's you know, the grieving process is very unique. You know what I mean? I think everybody and all the listeners will agree, like, the worst thing can happen to you is lose a child, right? For any reason, reason. There's no good reason, you know what I mean? And the problem is with an overdose, the stigma that's associated with it. Like all of a sudden you're a bad parent. You didn't raise your kids right. You know, if you'd have just had your kids in church, you know what I mean? Those kind of things that we do as a society, which I did all that. And I'm not trying to say I'm a saint by no means, because I'm not. But I checked all those marks. And trying to, you know, overcome that, because the stigma was tough, man. You know what I mean? It was tough. And I think that's kind of what drove me into the space too, is we just didn't understand it. We got a lot better understanding of addiction and substance use and alcoholism now. Still a lot of work to do, you know what I mean? And we'll talk through some of that stuff, but it's been a journey, man. It's been a journey. You know, God's been good, man. God's been good. And, you know, it's sometimes hard for me to say out loud, you know?
Yeah.
Because, it's sucked along the way too.
Yeah.
You know
absolutely.
I mean? Yeah.
And so faith played a big.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm thinking, I'm putting myself in your shoes. Like I said, I have a 25-year-old son and a daughter, and I'm thinking, I don't know how I could rebound from that. Like, I mean, the testament of resilience, you and your whole family, your wife and your 2 daughters. How did you guys? Yeah. I know it was rough. Was it the faith that the rock?
I think so. I think, you know, and listen, man, I know we're in a tricky situation in today's society. You know, we don't do a good job of, you know, working out our faith. And I think sometimes as Christians, we're just not great examples sometimes, man. Yeah. And we hurt the kingdom sometimes more than we help the kingdom. You know what I mean? Me first. I screw a lot of things up, man. So, but for sure for us is, you know, my wife and I were equally yoked. We had been in church our whole lives. I was saved and baptized as a young man, and I never stopped believing, even in the midst of that. You know, it was hard. I mean, I think for the first time ever in my life, I really pushed back and said, God, like, this is how my story ends. You know, I've tried to do the right thing. I've played by the rules. I've tried to serve you, and my kids get stumped in a field. This is how this ends. Right. You know what I mean? And I think in all of that, you know, when we can slow down and we can take deep breath, you know, God's ways aren't our ways, right? And that's what we had to do. We had to just slow down. We had to take a deep breath. My oldest daughter was a sophomore in college at Walsh. My youngest daughter was a senior in high school. And Tyler was the 3rd young man to die of a heroin overdose in Hartville. Right, within a year.
A small little town.
Yeah. And so that kind of triggered the whole community, man. And so my daughter and the 2 other girls that lost their older brothers too did a presentation at the high school kind of talking about what's going on, you know, and they each shared their stories. And at the time, you know, this is a couple months right after Tyler passed. Oh. And, you know, at the time, I'm silent on the issue, man. I'm still caught in shame. I'm still caught in failure. I'm still caught in embarrassment. And I'm watching my 17-year-old daughter share our story and have more guts and courage than her dad, man. And I was super proud of her, but I was ashamed of myself because my pride got in the way of us at that point sharing our story. You know what I mean? And so when Tyler was in active addiction, nobody knew. I could barely talk about it with my family. You know what I mean? None of my friends knew. Like, none of my friends had no idea what was going on. And they seen it on the news and in the paper, just like everybody else. Like, Trav, what happened, man? And that was all me caught up in the stigma, right? Me caught up in my, again, my own pride, you know? And at that point, that's when I knew that, listen, man, there's a story here, and I got to start sharing it, and I got to get over myself because this story is happening all across our community. It's happening all across our country, and I need to be a voice, man. I need to be a voice. And I think that's kind of what drove me into it, man. You know what I mean? And so, you know, through that, these girls were talking and at their school, and then that kind of took off, and my daughter spent her whole senior year traveling to high schools all across Stark County, Summit County, and Portage County. And so through that, we formed a Facebook page, started to talk about these girls, and then through that, that's what drove us to form the nonprofit. And so she was kind of the driving force behind all of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And was your wife on board
from
the beginning? Or?
Oh, yeah. So the great thing about this thing is that Shelly and I have been equally yoked. And the reason why I say it that way, it's not me pushing this, it's not her pushing this. we do it together, and we've done it together the whole time. The divorce rate goes like off the chart when you lose a child, because you don't heal, you don't grieve at the same time, and then one person doesn't heal as fast as the other, and all those kind of things. And it's so easy to get into the blame game and point fingers and all that. And I'm so thankful that my wife never did that to me. You know what I mean? So we didn't play the blame game, man. We just sat down and we talked about it, and we said, hey, God is God. We're not. We got to walk into this. I don't like it, but how can we try to bring improvement? How can we bring change? How can we get the conversation going? And so we just decided to do that, man. We're going to take the worst thing that could happen to us as parents and, see how we can promote change.
So that's where it was born. And it was not easy. You had never started a nonprofit, 501c3. And I know a lot of people that have gone through that process, and it's not easy.
It's not easy. Nothing's easy, man.
Nothing worthwhile is easy. You got to you got to do the work.
Yeah. The good thing for me personally is, I had a lot of experience of running an executive board, of dealing with board members, getting board members, establishing bylaws. So I did have a little, probably more experience than most. I can tell you right now, some of the board members I have then, I don't have now. Right. People come and go, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes people are there for a season. Sometimes people aren't there to put the work in and get it done. Right. You know what I mean? So, it was difficult, man. It was difficult. Yeah, so to give you a little bit more, so the other thing that really drove this thing, so neither one of us were real comfortable going to the cemetery. Like it just, man, it just didn't feel good, man. I can tell you I've probably been there less than 10 times, man. Less than 10 times in 10 years. Honestly, probably 5 or 6 times. I find no peace there. All I find is my brokenness there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's just not comfortable. And my wife was kind of the same way. And she started going over to this field where they found Tyler. And she started going over there, and she started walking on the property. And then she started taking a couple of her friends and mentors with her, and they would go over there and they started praying. And my wife just started feeling a desire for change and a desire to do something, and kind of teasing a little bit. But she'd come home and she's like, hey, man, we're going to buy this property, man. She's like, we're going to buy this property. I was like, all right, Shelly, just slow down. You know what I mean? And then she just like persistent doing it, man. And finally she comes home and she goes, listen, I'm not clowning. She's like, go get a loan and we're going to buy this property, man. And I'm like, she's like, God's told me, man. And I'm like, well, good. If God's told you, then he'll provide a way and I don't have to get a loan.
Right.
And that'll lead us into the next part.
That's a great segue. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So you're, like we said in the intro, president of Teamsters, local number 24 in Akron, Ohio, for 28 years.
So I've been a long
time.
I've been a full-time officer right now. I'm working in my 30th year.
Right. And how many terms?
So I'm
7.
I've been elected 10 times. I'm on my 9th term as the president of Local
which is
24.
unprecedented.
Yeah.
For those that aren't familiar. Yeah. I mean, I'm not, not trying to blow smoke or brag, but it's a big deal. I mean, it's a testament to, if we're talking about leadership.
Yeah.
Somebody doesn't at a young age.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was 20. After high school, I went in the Marine Corps. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then I came back. I started working at Roadway Express as a dock worker. And I actively started getting involved with the union. I became the shop steward. I think I was 22 years old, a shop steward. And then I just kept, being actively involved. And then at 29, I ran for a full-time position, business agent position. I got elected. And then at 32, I ran for president, principal officer, and youngest president in history of the local. Yeah. And then I've got elected a couple more times afterwards.
Yeah, and going for one more.
Yeah, I need one more for sure. Yeah. So within the Teamsters and within the local, as this was going on in my life, I also recognized it was going on in a member's life. I also seen it was very common for our members to get hurt, right, on the job, working on the dock, working in a warehouse and those kind of things. They get a shoulder injury, go to the doctor gives him opiate, right? Come back, it's 10 degrees out, snowing. I don't feel great today, but I take this pain pill, I'm going to feel a little better. And I got to provide for my family. I got to go to work.
Right.
And that's how innocently and easy addiction happens, man. Right. And so I started seeing it in my own local, man. I'm like, man, this ain't just me, man. This is affecting our members too. So I wrote a letter to the general president. So every 5 years, the Teamsters has our national convention. This was in 2016. And so I wrote a letter to our general president, and I kind of shared our story. And I kind of said something like, as union leaders, we're community leaders. And there's nothing impacting our community than the opiate epidemic. And the general president called me back. And he didn't write, I wrote him a letter. He picked up the phone and called me. And he said, Travis, I hear your story, man. And I'm going to give you a chance to speak at our convention. He goes, I want you to share your story, man. So I did that.
And that's a big deal. I mean, let's set that up.
It's a huge deal.
We're talking how many thousand?
There's probably 5,000 people in the room. We got, so the Teamsters, we got 1.4 million members all across the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. There's probably 400 local unions all across the country like mine. You know what I mean? So we come together every 5 years to do the business of the union. You know what I mean? There's lots of, we set goals, we set strategies, you know what I mean? And we got business to get through, and that's the purpose of that convention. But, the great thing about the Teamsters Union is we're actively involved in our communities, man. And we try to make a difference.
Yeah.
We try to
I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah.
That was something new that I learned, so I appreciate learning that.
Yeah, the Teamsters, man, they're a very generous organization, man, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. We're active in our community. We care about our community, man. You know what I mean? Obviously, this is where we live. This is, where we're raising our kids, man.
Right.
So, like I said, I wrote the letter. The general president called me back, and the reason why you said that's a pretty big deal, and I'll agree with that because I wrote letters before and never got phone calls back. Oh. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so this wasn't the first time.
Yeah, like, hey, I wrote a letter on this issue, and it's like, okay, that's not that.
But not on
something
topic.
like this. Yeah,
yeah.
Not
So
on
this was
this.
different.
Yeah, this was different. And so he calls me back and says, hey, man, I want you to speak at the convention. And the thing about that too was, a lot of times they make you prepare a speech, give it to them in advance, they proofread it, they send it back, change this, change that. They didn't make me do none of that. He didn't say, you got 5 minutes. He didn't say you got 10 minutes. He said, you get up there and you share your story, man. You know what I mean? So at that point, it was like, man, I'm just going to share my story. I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to be, transparent. And I was going to lay it out there, man. And I did. It was 10, 15-minute speech. It was crazy. After I was done, kind of shared our story, kind of like I shared with you, and a little more details. And after I was done, man, Teamsters from all across the country started coming up to the mic and started making donations, pledges for donations to support our nonprofit. The first donation was $5,000. Second donation was $10,000. Third donation was $50,000. This went on for over an hour, and when it was done, we raised over $1 million, man. In an hour.
I mean, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
That's just crazy, the power of that community and the respect they have for you and your family.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the other thing that it did, and I think this was probably the most humbling part for me because, honestly, I was pretty embarrassed, man. I struggled with failure, man. I struggled with, man, I wasn't the father I should have been to my kid, man.
Right.
And that still beats me up a little bit, But what was so awesome about it is as these guys were coming up and making pledges, and they're like, hey, Travis, man, this happened to my nephew. Hey, my brother's struggling too. My dad, we had a cat come to the mic, and he goes, I've been in recovery for 25 years, but I've been afraid to tell anybody, man. You know what I mean? And the stigma in that room, it was just so awesome because it was.
You opened it up, man.
It was just awesome, man. I can't tell you.
You opened it up. Like there's a lot more to that story, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing about it was, did I give a passionate speech? Yeah, okay, whatever. But the reason why it went the way it did is because what I was saying, a lot of those folks were experiencing the exact same thing. They were just in Minneapolis, or they were in Indiana, or they were in California, but the same thing was going on in their town. It was going on in our town.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The shame. And not wanting
the
to.
stigma.
Stigma and
you know what I mean?
Wanting to share their story.
So it was so awesome, man. It was so humbling. I was so thankful that my wife and my oldest daughter was with me so they could see it and feel it. And they were in the room when I made the speech, and they felt it, man. And it was just a great experience for my kids to be able to see. You know what I mean?
And then we're going to link to it in the show notes, and I recommend everybody listen to it. I watched it last night. I had goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was one of the most powerful speeches I've listened to in a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that it had the impact that it did. So
it's very humbling, man. The thing I would share there is like our stories matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Our life journey matters. I don't believe that God lets us go through things to torture us.
Right.
I believe God lets us go through things to mold us, to change us, to shape us.
Right. There's got to be a reason.
Right. And, you know, that's my faith. And you know what I mean? And everybody's got their own. It's just, that's my faith. You know what I mean? And so how you do the little things is how you do everything. You know what I mean? And what the military does, and it's regardless of whether you're in the Marine Corps or any branch, you just constantly training, and you're just doing the same stuff over and over and over. You know why? Because you have to, because it's a response then. You just respond.
We're talking about habits.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. 100%, man.
So Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
You have to do the reps.
Yes.
And I was just listening to a podcast the other day. They were talking about that exact thing.
Yes.
You know, where it's, you know, who are you going to call when there's, you know, a traumatic event? You call 911, first responders.
Yeah.
And they're going to be able to deal with it because they've been through it time and time. Yeah. Does it ever get easier? You look at, but you can respond instead of react.
Yes, 100%.
And then just building it into a habit.
And you know, like, how do you expect your boss to trust you with something when he can't trust you with the little stuff?
Right.
Like one is like just showing up on time.
Right.
Not real difficult, man.
Right.
Nothing hard about it.
The basics.
I'm a firm believer is do the little things right. Do the little things right, man. And do them all the time. You know what I mean? Just do them right. Just do them right all the time. Yeah. And like you said, that habit, that just leads. You're just stacking success upon success. Yeah, the Marine Corps, you know, obviously it taught me a little bit of command presence. You don't BS nobody in the Marine Corps, man, because you're all the guys in the room will call you out. You either know what you're talking about or you don't. You know what I mean? You're prepared or you're not, right? And those are the things that makes it great, man.
So it's a high expectations.
Yeah, the expectation's super high.
Right.
You know, accountability back to your buddy, man, and to the group, man, and that no one's bigger than the mission or bigger than the Marine Corps.
Right.
And I think that's another one that we get sideways on, man, is whatever your corporate logo is, the CEO, the boss, whatever, no one's bigger than the logo, man. You know, I wear the Teamster logo. We get a lot of Teamster leaders at times that get full of themselves, and they think they're bigger than the group. They think they're bigger than the organization. No one's bigger than the organization. Our organization's been around for 125 years, bud. It's going to be long here after Travis is gone, man.
Right.
Travis is not bigger than the Teamsters Union.
Right.
Right?
I can totally relate, and I agree. There's a lot of leadership lessons to be learned. Let's talk about your routine a little bit, because you've been on a long journey here.
Yeah.
And you know, a personal growth journey.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
You've been able to be vulnerable and call your own self out and fail and go through that. And that's hard.
Yeah,
real
hard.
That's real hard. I mean, you're in shape, man. Like you are in shape for your age. So not a lot of people. So I be curious to share with the listeners, like, what's Travis's routine? How did you get here, and what are the things that you do that you're willing to share? You know, do you have a specific morning routine?
Yeah. So, you know, let me first just say this. Who Travis was prior to Tyler passing and who Travis is to now is not the same guy. And I'm actually proud of that. Because, you know, I was a typical dude, man. Me, myself, and I, my family, my stuff. You know what I mean? Not that I didn't care about people, but, you know, I tease and I say this, and I'm teasing a little bit, but it's also true. Like I always say when Shelly and I are in public events and we're talking, it's like Shelly always wanted to save the world. Travis just wanted to save himself, right? And it's really true. And I say it, I'm teasing a little bit, but it's really true. Shelly's always wanted to save the world. I really just wanted to save myself, man. You know what I mean? And what tragedy has taught me is empathy for mankind, empathy and compassion for my fellow man. You know what I mean? And I think I'm a different person because of that. Now it's a different dude. I'm a different dude. And I would hope that my friends, my closest friends and my family would say, Travis is a different dude today. Because here's my choice at the time. My choice at the time is become bitter and angry, depressed, grumpy old man. Or I could become better. I could become a better person. Through tragedy, I could somehow become a better person, right? And that's what I've worked on. And it's been very hard. It's been very hard. It's not been easy, man. And
but you've done the work.
The key is work.
You made the choice to do the work.
Yeah,
and that's where a lot of people falter, is they just don't, for whatever reason, they don't make that choice. And I think you already had some of that from being in the Marines, and you were ready to get back on mission and do the work.
Yeah, and
what was some of the work that you did?
The key is the work, right? So that means I had to go through counseling. I had to go through PTSD, traumatic stress counseling, right? And I had my own childhood and lots of issues there too. You know, I didn't really have a relationship with my real father. He was an alcoholic, lived in poverty his whole life, you know. And I had to go through counseling, which is something I didn't want to do. Did not want to do it. Told my wife there's no way I was going to do it, right? Got the wrong guy. I'm not going to counseling. Because a typical guy, typical guy, right?
You're like, no, I don't need this.
Yeah, I don't need that. You know what I mean? And we went through counseling, and me and my wife went through marriage counseling. You know what I mean? And so you got to put in the work. So what I would tell the people is, like, you know, if you want to grow spiritually, get some spiritual people around you, right? Like all growth is outside your comfort zone. All growth is outside your comfort zone. You want to grow spiritually, it's outside your comfort zone. You want to grow emotionally, it's outside your comfort zone. You want to grow physically, it's outside your comfort zone. All growth is outside of your comfort zone. And the problem is we just like being warm and fuzzy all the time.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
We just want to be warm and fuzzy all the time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's complacent. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy.
And I think for me personally, you know, there's just so many things with my old self that I couldn't look in the mirror and be happy about, honestly. And I made a lot of mistakes, man. And so the other thing you got to realize is that you cannot change what happened. Right. You only get to control your response now. How do I respond to this? Yep. Learning to control my temper, learning to control my anger, learning to be a gentleman, you know what I mean? Instead of some raging lunatic, you know what I mean? And so those are things that I've worked hard on. I've been very fortunate. I've had outstanding people around me, man. I got a great executive board at Teamsters Local 24. I've had great guys around me that has helped me and encouraged me. My number 2 guy's been with me for 25 years, man. And I could have never had the success I've had in the Teamsters Union without that dude. Leaders develop leaders, and leaders let people lead. And you get people around you, man, and you all work towards the same mission. You know what I mean? So I've had great guys around me, man. Great guys.
Those are, 2 great thoughts right there. I love those.
Yeah. You know, when you talk about my own routine, you know, I've been in the gym for over 40 years. Okay. I started training with weights between 12 and 13, man. And I've never stopped. And in the beginning, it was about physical fitness. Mm-hmm. Today, it's more about mental and emotional fitness. Yeah.
We talked about that, yeah.
You know what I mean? I can kind of handle the alligators a little better.
We're not trying to enter a competition now.
Yeah. You know what I mean? My better days are behind me, you know. But so my morning routine looks like I'm in the gym 4 and 5 days a week. The time varies. Most of the time it's in the morning, but it could be early as, you know, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It could be a little later, 6 or 7. It depends on what I got going on that particular day. But I usually start, honestly, it's just going to sound silly, but I start in a hot tub, okay? I start drinking a glass of water first thing, have a cup of coffee, and then I work on something spiritual or something motivational or positive thoughts. Sometimes I just do affirmations.
Yeah, I was going to say affirmations. We talk a lot about this on the show.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes it's just affirmations, getting that positive energy in my head. So I do that every day. Okay. And then at some point I get into the gym. I work out 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending, most of the time with weights, do some type of walk. And here's the way I say it. The mornings are for me. You know why the mornings are for me? Because the rest of the day is about everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the rest of my day is about serving my members. It's about trying to help our organization. It has nothing to do with Travis. It's about what I can give away. It's about how I can help other people. It's about how I can help solve problems.
Right.
And
you can't do all that.
Can't do that if you don't take care of yourself.
That's the message here.
Huge,
really.
man.
I mean, you
Huge,
got to take
man.
care of yourself.
You know, if your
in
tank
the morning is
yeah.
the time to do it.
Yeah.
Before the world gets its hooks into you.
100%.
Spend that time. Whatever. It could be 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, a gratitude practice, a 5-minute walk.
100%.
That's it.
100%.
Just get something going. Build some momentum, right?
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, if training with weights ain't your thing, like you said, go for a hike, go for a walk, ride your bike. I don't care.
Movement.
Do something.
It's movement.
Do something, you know. Do something physical.
Right.
Do something physical, man, you know.
Get
so,
up and move.
you know, those are the things that I've done. I've done it for a long time. You know, so here's the thing. And I learned this early. You know, I got elected as a full-time rep in 1996. I went to the Teamster Leadership Academy in Washington, and they coach us up on a lot of Teamster business stuff, right? But two things they talked about at the Teamster Leadership Academy that I hung on to. A huge percent of our guys have heart attacks because of the stress level. And then a huge percent of our guys get divorced. Because you're constantly at home, you're constantly traveling, you're constantly on the run. You got a lot of stress in your life. You know, you come home pissed off, kick the dog, yell at the wife, right? Heart attacks and divorce and alcoholism. They brought all those up, all three of those up at the academy. And I listened. Big ears at that time, you know what I mean? And I said, I'm not going to get a divorce, man. I'm going to do everything I can to keep my family together. I'm not going to struggle with alcohol, right? And the way I can control myself not having a heart attack is I'm going to work out like a nut. You know what I mean? And then if I have a heart attack, I have a heart attack. It'll probably be in the gym when it happens.
Right, yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And I think I don't really think that's unique to the Teamsters. I think that's unique to leaders. I think that's the guys who are leading. You know, there's a lot of stress in leadership and a lot of decision making and a lot of pressure and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so I always say you can't give something away you don't have. So if you're not full of energy and passion and enthusiasm, you can't give it away. You can't give it away. So the first person you better take care of is you, because nobody else is going to. You know why? Because nobody gives a shit.
Right.
They don't care, man.
Right.
So you better care. You better care. Right?
Right. We invest in everything else. The best investment we can make is in ourselves.
100%.
Right.
100%.
Man, Travis, this has been great, man. I was thinking about it this morning. It's just a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
You know, I try to put myself in your shoes. I can't even imagine. I mean, this is truly two words: resilience and hope, and inspiration, you know, for people. Second chances. You had a second chance.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, you're a new man and changed this organization you've built, this movement. I mean, there's just so many things to be proud of. And I know you're hard on yourself, but man, what you've done is, I mean, it's an incredible story built off of a horrible tragedy. But what you're doing is making a difference.
Yeah,
you know,
thank you.
It is. And I'm so grateful that you came back into my life. I know that we're going to continue to have conversations, hopefully get a workout in.
Yeah, love it.
At some point.
Yeah.
And come out to your place and shoot some stick, meet some people, maybe volunteer.
Yeah,
you know, if there's one, you've dropped a lot of great nuggets here today. If there's one thing what do you want to mic drop and just leave us with?
Well, I think, you know, we got to realize is we need each other. We need community. We need people around us, right? And like when I talk to parents and I'm in schools or I talk to parents, and most of the parents say something like this, you know, my daughters are doing pretty good. My son's in the basement vaping, watching video games, right? And I think young men today are struggling. And there's lots of reasons. Like I said, there's lots of moving parts, right? But just to hit you with some quick numbers, man, you know, 3 out of 4 of opiate addiction is men, right? 3 out of 4 homelessness is men. 90% of incarceration is men, right? We have to do a better job of coaching, mentoring, training, and encouraging young men. And people my age, we don't do a good job of it. We have a tendency to say, yeah, get your shit together, let's go. Right? And we have no empathy back for people, man. And one of the things I'm personally doing is trying to understand what are the struggles of a young man today. Because for the first time in the history of our country, 30-year-olds are not doing as good as 30-year-olds of our parents. It's the first time ever, right? And so there's real problems going on in our country, man. And there's real problems going on. And I think we need to understand some of that. And then we need to do a better example of rallying around young guys and helping them and encouraging them and not judging them. Get over the stupid stuff, man.
Right.
Get over it. You know what I mean? And meet people where they're at and love people, encourage people. And, the best way we can do that is you got to show up.
Right.
Got to show up, man. And all of us are in unique environments. I promise every listener right now has somebody in their life they can mentor. They have somebody in their life they can reach out. They got a nephew. They got somebody like, man, I need to reach out to that kid. I need to do my part and try to help that kid. Right? And there's no self-made people.
Right.
I don't believe in that crap for a second, self-made millionaires. I don't believe in that, man. I know I've had mentors my whole life. I've had people that poured into me. I've had people that believe in me, and that's helped me grow as a person and it's helped me succeed. We need each other. We need community.
We all need help.
We need help.
And it's
man.
okay.
Yes.
And I struggle with that concept for the longest time.
We do as men, man.
I can do it all. Blue collar.
Yep.
I can work my ass off.
Yeah.
I'll get there. I don't need anything. Hell or high water, I'll get there.
Yeah.
You know what? For what?
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't need to have I don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. I need to be smart enough to say, I need help. It's okay, right?
So here's what I always say, man, because in the Teamsters, we have lots of crafts and divisions that we represent, right? And I came out of the freight division. So, I was an expert in the freight contract. I worked it for a long time and, policed it, negotiated, been in negotiations. But I wasn't an expert in the car haul division. I wasn't an expert in the brewery and soft drink division. I wasn't an expert in the construction division. And I don't have to become one. I just got to get the expert on my side.
Right.
Right? I think a lot of times we think we got to know it all. You don't have to know it all, man. You got to, you know what I mean? We need help. It's okay to say I need help. It's okay to say I'm hurt. It's okay to say, hey, man, I'm screwing this up. Can you bail me out, bud?
Right.
You know what I mean? I think we need to humble ourselves a lot more. Me first.
Yeah.
Me first. You know what I mean? Humble ourselves a lot more, man. Look in the mirror. I think things you had on there and we talked a little bit about is like, through your Teamster career, what's the biggest disappointment or hardest event to get through? And I've been through lots of stuff, man. I've had strikes. I've had companies go out of business. I've had hard negotiations. I've had people lose jobs. And those are always very, very painful, man. Very hard. But I think for me personally is when you disappoint somebody, right? Somebody believes in you and you had to pivot. You had to make a different decision. You had to make a decision that he didn't like. And that disappointment's hard. It's hard. You know what I mean? And I think we should own it. I think we should take it seriously, okay? But at the end of the day, you got to look in the mirror. And when you look in the mirror, are you satisfied? Can you look in the mirror and say, I did the very best job I could with the facts I had. I did the very best job I could with the facts that I had in front of me at that time, right? And if you can look in the mirror, that should be your biggest gauge. Not everybody around you. Man, hold yourself accountable. You know what I mean? Look in the mirror. And I think for me, however it shakes out for me, I'm looking in the mirror, bud.
Right.
I'm looking in the mirror.
What do you see?
I want to see a dude that could change, right? That could adapt, that could overcome, right? That believed in people, right? That never gave up on people, right? I don't care how many times you relapsed. You always get a second chance, man. You always get a second chance. You know what I mean? And I think that's the dude I want to see.
Compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Well, I like what I see, brother.
Love it, man. Thank you, friend. Yep.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You are on your way to growth, transformation, and joy. If you find this episode helpful, please like and share with your friends, and by all means, please leave us a review. You can also view the show notes and subscribe to the Bolt newsletter at toddbirch.com. Remember, real change takes time. Start small and watch that growth take shape.